Donald Trump has made no secret of the fact that Cuba is his next target.
Cuba is in its last moments of life, as it was.
You know, all my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba.
The communist island, less than 100 miles from Florida, has a fraught history with the US, and the situation has escalated since January when Washington cut off its oil supply. Now a United States aircraft carrier has been deployed to the Caribbean, and the US Department of Justice has charged former Cuban President Raul Castro with murder. So how have US-Cuba relations got to this stage? And is Cuba next on President Trump's list for attempted regime change? For the latest on this and all the world's top stories, don't forget to subscribe to AFP.
For the first time in nearly 70 years, senior leadership of the Cuban regime has been charged in this country, in the United States of America, for acts of violence resulting in the deaths of American citizens.
This is how the US announced the indictment for murder of Raul Castro, the 94-year-old former president of Cuba who helped lead the country's 1959 revolution alongside his brother Fidel. The charges are over an event which happened 30 years ago. In February 1996, Cuban fighter jets shot down 2 civilian US planes belonging to a group called Brothers to the Rescue, which campaigned for the end of communist rule in Cuba. 4 people were killed, including 3 Americans.
President Trump is committed to restoring a very simple but important principle. If you kill Americans, we will pursue you, no matter who you are, no matter what title you hold, and in this case, no matter how much time has passed.
Following the indictment, supporters of Raul Castro and the Cuban government protested outside Havana's US embassy, among them Castro's daughter.
Estamos todos muy serenos, porque no es la primera vez que recibimos amenazas y además campañas tan despiadadas por parte del imperialismo.
But that calm may not last. Cuba's leaders will be worried the Trump administration is following a playbook used against Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro earlier this year. The US indicted him for narco-terrorism and other charges back in 2020 during Trump's first term. Then, nearly a year into Trump's second term, this happened. US forces swept into Caracas and arrested Maduro, bringing him back to New York in handcuffs to stand trial. Maduro's vice president took over as Venezuelan leader, but only after agreeing to cooperate with Washington, leaving Cuba without one of its few allies in the region, and crucially, without its main supplier of oil. Since then, the island has faced a deepening economic crisis, with electricity blackouts a regular occurrence. Only one Russian tanker has been allowed through the US blockade since January, and Cuba's government says that fuel from that delivery has now run out. The crisis has seen tourism to Cuba drop by half since the start of the year, and without power, production has slowed in key industries such as cobalt and nickel mining and cigar making.
Sin corriente no se puede trabajar, entonces aquí estamos esperando a que las guaguas vengan.
Sí, claro que la cosa está recrudecida, ¿no? Por el petróleo, no hay petróleo. Imagínate tú, ¿qué vamos a hacer?
Havana residents have held after-dark protests like this one against the power cuts, and what was already a precarious situation for many has got even worse. While official data are lacking, AFP estimates that food prices rose by around 470% between 2018 and 2023, and they've since soared even higher.
We are extremely worried about Cuba's deepening socioeconomic crisis amid a decades-long financial and trade embargo, extreme weather events, and the recent US measures restricting oil shipments. This is having an increasingly severe impact on the human rights of people in Cuba.
As pressures increased on Cuba's government, the head of the CIA made a rare visit to Havana for negotiations, with the US calling for fundamental reforms to the country's state-run economy. Washington has also offered $100 million in aid, though this would have to be distributed by NGOs and the Catholic Church rather than the government, and the offer has come alongside the arrival of a US aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz, in Caribbean waters. So why is Washington so keen to bend Cuba to its will? The two nations have been fiercely opposed since 1959's Cuban Revolution, through which a pro-US dictatorship was replaced with communist rule under Fidel Castro. This saw many US-owned businesses nationalized. A low point in relations was the American-backed Bay of Pigs invasion, which failed to topple Castro in 1961, and the island has faced a decades-long US trade embargo since then. Relations thawed under Barack Obama, who reopened the US Embassy in Havana and became the first US president to visit the island in 88 years. Donald Trump resumed the pressure on Cuba and sees the whole Western Hemisphere as a US area of dominance. This idea was originally named the Monroe Doctrine, after the 19th century president James Monroe, and Donald Trump has referred to his attempt to revive it as the Donroe Doctrine. Opponents of Cuba's one-party rule are cautious on how far to support any US intervention.
I think many of the people in Cuba want change. You need only to see the news feeds coming out of Cuba to see their desperation. You need to only see that since 2020, more than 1 million Cubans have left Cuba. So they're desperate for change. Whether they want to see that change come through the barrel of a US gun, I don't know.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is himself the son of Cuban immigrants, and in a video published last month, he appealed directly to the Cuban people.
El presidente Trump ofrece una nueva relación entre Estados Unidos y Cuba. La verdadera razón por la que no tienen electricidad, combustible ni alimentos es porque quienes controlan su país han saqueado miles de millones de dólares, pero nada ha sido utilizado para ayudar al pueblo.
At an event marking this year's anniversary of the Bay of Pigs invasion, Cuba's president pushed back against US pressure.
El momento es sumamente desafiante y nos convoca otra vez, como en aquel 16 de abril de 1961, a estar listos para enfrentar serias amenazas, entre ellas la agresión militar. No la queremos, pero es nuestro deber prepararnos para evitarla y, si fuera inevitable, ganarla.
So beyond its current blockade, will the US actually move against Cuba? Donald Trump has actually said that plans are being held up by the war in Iran.
But Cuba is in its last moments of life, as it was. It'll have a great new life, but it's in its last moments of life the way it is. But our focus right now is on Iran.
After a lightning victory in Venezuela, the White House hoped joint US and Israeli strikes on Iran would also be a quick success. But months since the country's supreme leader was killed, Iran still controls access to the Strait of Hormuz and doesn't appear in any rush to agree a peace deal to reopen it. There are other reasons to think military strikes may not have the quick effect they did in Venezuela.
Unlike elements of the government under Nicolás Maduro, which was very fractured, corrupt, very transactional, the Cuban government's a revolutionary government. It is much more disciplined and coherent, consistent in its ideology than the Venezuelan government.
Donald Trump clearly wants to move against Cuba's government one way or another. Whether he does so or not could hinge on whether he thinks a quick win could distract from the Middle East ahead of midterm elections in the US, or if he wants to conclude a peace deal with Iran before getting involved in any more military entanglements.